Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa, and this is the first episode of What's Your Favorite Scary Story? I already want to say thank you to whoever is out there listening. I've always had an interest in all things spooky and paranormal, but over the past few years, I've really developed a passion for it. I could really just spend all day talking about it. So naturally, a paranormal podcast made sense. And I thought it would be really cool to go into depth into not only topics that I find interesting, but ones that you do as well. So, this podcast is all about what you guys want to hear. I wanted to cover stories that listeners are interested in. That way, I know whoever is listening to this podcast will actually truly enjoy the topics that I research and talk about. So, every week, I will pick a topic that is sent in from one of you and give you a shout out if you'd like. You can send these suggestions to the email whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. And if you happen to have any personal stories regarding your topic, I would love to hear them and include them in the episode. I do have an Instagram for the podcast, so you can stay up to date on everything. That is also just going to be at What's Your Favorite Scary Story. Now, obviously, since this is the first episode, I don't have any listeners just yet. So my first few topics are going to be suggestions from my friends and family. This episode was suggested by my fiancée Marlene. This was an extra exciting story to research and cover because we actually just visited it recently. This is the story of the Winchester Mystery House. I'm going to start off with the history of how the house came to be. The house was the product of Sarah Winchester. She was born Sarah Pardee in 1839 in New Haven, Connecticut. She was born into the upper middle class and was very well educated as a child. She was fluent in 5 languages and played 3 instruments by the time she was 12. In 1862, she married William Winchester. William was heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, which was founded by his father Oliver. Sarah had married into a very successful and wealthy family. In 1866, Sarah gave birth to their first and only child, Annie. Unfortunately, less than 6 weeks after she was born, Annie passed away from marasmus, a very rare disease. 14 years later, in 1880, William's father died. A short 3 months after that, Sarah lost William to tuberculosis. One of Sarah's older sisters passed away shortly after that, so she decided she needed to leave her home and make a fresh start. Before her move, Sarah visited a medium in Boston. This medium told her that her family fortune was cursed by all of the spirits that were killed by the Winchester rifles. Sarah was told that in order to appease the spirits, she needed to move out west and build a house, and to continue building that house forever. Otherwise, she would die. Now, what I didn't mention before is that when William passed away, everything was left to Sarah. She inherited $20 million and 50% of the company's stock. This equates to about $560 million in today's U.S. currency. She also would receive $1,000 every single day for the rest of her life. This is the same as $25,000 today. This made her one of the wealthiest women in the world. In 1885, Sarah followed the medium's instructions and moved to the West Coast. She purchased a 2-story, 8-bedroom farmhouse in San Jose, California, and started renovations immediately. Supposedly, she had people working on the house around the clock, 24/7, for 38 years straight. Although there were reported rumors that she would have them take breaks periodically in the summer due to the heat. Regardless, the renovations on this place never stopped. The main story behind the reasoning of this is what the medium said about appeasing the spirits so she wouldn't be killed or haunted. Some say it was to trap the spirits. Another story is that it was built to confuse the spirits. The reason that this house, or should I say mansion, was said to confuse the spirits is because it's not like your normal house. In its prime, it was 7 stories and over 24,000 square feet. It had approximately 600 rooms, 6 kitchens, 3 dining rooms, 40 staircases, 47 fireplaces, over 2,000 doors, and over 10,000 windows. And it just gets crazier. The real perplexing part about this place is the design. All designs were provided by Sarah herself, and supposedly she was given those designs during seances by the spirits she was trying to appease. She actually had a room dedicated to this, although it is up for debate which room this actually was, but she was said to hold seances there every night from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. to find out what the spirits wanted built next. She was the only one ever allowed in this room. In fact, in her older age, she had such bad arthritis that she would have an employee bring her to the room in a wheelchair, but she would make him leave before she would even open the door. Clearly, this time was very special for Sarah. But it is speculated that she wasn't even trying to reach the victims of the Winchester rifles. Some say she was trying to speak with her loved ones who have passed. It is even believed she just was having some time to herself. All that is known for sure is that every night at 12 a.m. and then again at 2 a.m., there would be 13 bell chimes, and Sarah would emerge from the room with the next part of her construction plans. 13 seemed to be a very significant number to Sarah and can be found in different ways throughout the house. Many rooms have 13 window panes and 13 wall panels. There would be 13 stairs in each staircase. There are 13 bathrooms. Sinks would even have 13 drain holes, and there were 13 coat hooks in the seance room. Speaking of, let's get back to these crazy designs that Sarah would have her employees make come to life. There were stairs and doors that led to nowhere, a drop down into the kitchen sink, windows in the floor, extremely small doors that could be opened from one side and not the other, balconies and windows that face indoors, small rooms inside larger rooms, cabinets less than an inch deep, and one cabinet that opens to 30 rooms behind it. And there's so many other parts of this place that are just so fascinating, not to mention beautiful. This was a traditional, but also not so traditional, Victorian mansion. Even though the architecture was bizarre, it was gorgeous and the attention to detail was stunning. Now, to have this place being worked on continuously, she would have about 16 men working on it at a time. At times, she would have them build a room, only to scrap it the next day and start over so that the construction just never stopped. The workers would do these kinds of projects for her, no questions asked, because Sarah was very good to her employees. She had homes built on the property for single men and men with families, and the single women would stay in her home. She took wonderful care of them by providing a free place to stay and free food, and she also paid them 3 times the going rate at the time. But in 1906, tragedy struck. The earthquake in San Francisco made its impact in San Jose and destroyed parts of the Winchester Mystery House, and also trapped Sarah inside a room. Her employees rescued her by prying the door open with a crowbar. Due to the damage, the house went from being 7 stories to only 4, and from having 600 rooms to 160, which is how it stands today. After the earthquake, Sarah bought a house nearby in Atherton, California, to be closer to her niece Marion, who went by Daisy. Daisy had lived in the Winchester house for years and acted as Sarah's assistant. Sarah spent the majority of the rest of her life at this house in Atherton, but on September 5th, 1922, she passed away from heart failure in the Winchester house. The second the construction workers heard of her passing, they immediately ceased working. There are literally still nails found in the house that are only nailed halfway into the wood. All in all, it is estimated that it cost her about $5 million to build this house. That's about $71 million today. Rumors spread about the rest of her fortune being hidden in the house, so naturally the search was on. Eventually, a safe was discovered within another safe, behind a metal door, behind a wooden door. But the only things found in that safe were the obituaries of her late husband and daughter and locks of their hair. Even with all of her wealth, Sarah's most important treasure was her family, and I think that's really beautiful. Sarah's actual fortune and personal possessions were mostly left to her niece, Daisy. Now, the house was leased to a man named John Brown, a very successful roller coaster designer, actually. 6 months after Sarah's death, he opened it as a tourist attraction and officially purchased it in 1931. And fun fact, not long after it opened to the public, Harry Houdini visited it in order to debunk the paranormal stories. He was actually known at the time for calling out mediums that he believed were scamming people. so he went into the Winchester with the same intentions. However, when he left the house, he only had more questions than when he went in, and he called it a mystery. And that's when they started calling it the Winchester Mystery House. All right, now time for some ghosts. So, there doesn't seem to be any real evidence of the spirits that Sarah was trying to appease, but it is believed that some of the employees of hers are still hanging around. This place pretty much seems to have 3 different kinds of paranormal happenings. The first kind is residual. This is when the spirits are kind of just reliving the type of days they would have when they were alive, and they don't notice the existence of the current living world. The most popular example of a residual haunting seen here is called the Wheelbarrow Man. He's an employee whose job it was to remove the ash from the fireplaces in a wheelbarrow. He is often seen by guests and tour guides continuing his work like he used to do. So the next type of haunting is intelligent hauntings. This is when spirits are aware of the living world and interact with the living. There was a story reported by a maintenance worker where something seemed to be playing a little hide and seek or tag with him. He was in the water tower one morning and heard footsteps above him. He assumed it was a trespasser and went to tell them the area was off limits. As he was approaching where the footsteps were coming from, they always seemed to just be one step ahead and one floor above. He made it all the way up to the roof and never saw anyone. Lastly, we have shadow figures. This is the most reported occurrence. They are a shadow manifestation, mostly resembling the shape of a human. They have been seen in real time and captured in photos. One tour guide has reported seeing a figure, dressed all in black, at the very back of the group in multiple tours. Guests also confirmed with her that they noticed it too. It is thought to maybe be the spirit of Sarah, as she would often dress in all black. Now, I have a little something to throw in at the end here. As I mentioned at the beginning, my fiancée Marlene and I have recently paid the Winchester House a visit, and something kind of cool happened. So the following are her words. Well, I arrived with less than 5 minutes to check in for the house tour. We were walking pretty quickly through the parking lot, and I was frantically taking pictures of the outside of the house while we were walking towards the ticket booth to check in, which sits at the right side of the house if you're looking straight at the house from across the street. Next to the ticket booth, besides the house, is a plaque that officially marks the house as a California historical landmark. I thought that plaque in the side view of the house looked like a good picture to take, so I did. We went on with our tour, took 2 tours that night, which included the basement tour, because the house tour wasn't enough to fully take in the house. Not with that many rooms. I won't lie, I left a little underwhelmed. I didn't see any ghosts and the tours felt short, even though we went over our promised time on both tours. Fast forward to the next morning, I woke up to look through our pictures from the tours and found that the picture I took of the plaque had been photobombed. I pinched the image on my phone as wide as possible to get as close as I could on what looked like a figure in the window. I immediately got goosebumps. Luckily, I had my live photos feature on, so I knew that picture had 3 seconds of video before I captured that photo. I played and replayed the live, only to notice the figure in the window popping its head out, as if they were looking at us secretively. Almost like when you're trying to see who's at the front door knocking without trying to get noticed. A quick peek. I returned the next day doubting, telling myself it's probably a reflection, a smudge, a curtain. Certainly, the window was free of stains, wide open with no curtains in the way, and the sun was shining that day. It was raining the day before. When I went back to work that week to share my story and photo with my coworkers, one of my coworkers, his name is Al, told me a cool story about the Winchester rifle told within the gun community. He said, "Winchester, like the rifle?" I nodded, and he said, "Dang, my buddies would always talk about how Sarah Winchester, she kept building rooms because she was trying to build a room for every person that was killed by the Winchester rifle." Now, I don't even know if anyone really knows if that's true, but I think the beauty and the mystery of the house is only enhanced by the legends told and passed down that make you really wonder what the truth is, because I don't think we will ever really know the truth. Well, there you have it. That is the story of the Winchester Mystery House. I wouldn't say this is the most convincing story of a place being haunted, But it is just a fascinating story. A bit tragic, but so interesting. My one takeaway from this story would be that Sarah Winchester was a brilliant woman who built an amazing home and cared for her family and employees immensely. And if this place is haunted, I believe that it is haunted by the spirits of her dedicated employees that still want to get the job done for her. I hope you liked my take on this story, whether you already knew everything about it or had never heard of it before. But let me know what you would like me to cover next. There are so many stories I would love to tell you about, and I'm sure a ton I know nothing about. Either way, I would love to hear your suggestions. And really quick, I would just like to give Marlene a huge shout out. She has helped so much with behind the scenes stuff for this podcast, and without her, it would just simply not be possible. But thank you to whoever is out there listening. I really, truly appreciate it. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff forever, and it's even better if there's someone out there listening. So, just a reminder, you can send all story suggestions / personal experiences to whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. All right, bye. Stay spooky.